Hi, I'm George. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm here on Bournemouth Beach, and I'm going to paint a seascape of the beach and some people swimming in the sea, some of these clouds in the sky. But before I start painting, I'm going to take the opportunity to go for a nice swim in the sea, as whenever I paint, I always look at the sea and feel like I want to swim in it. And sometimes by the time I finish painting, I just don't have time to swim in the sea because maybe it gets dark or it gets cold. So now the sun's out, I think, why not go for a nice swim in the sea, then dry off in the sun and paint the paintings. Yeah, it's definitely very, very cold at sea. I'm not that good with the cold. I'm quite good with the heat. When stuff's really hot, I can deal with it. When it's cold, it's quite tough. I know once I'm in, it'll be okay. Just getting in. I'm in the sea now. Really cold, but once you're swimming, it's alright. So yeah, once you're in the water, it's not that bad. It's just that initial bit of actually getting in. It's always found so hard to do. So yeah, let's swim a little bit, and then let's paint some of the sea that I'm swimming in. The wave is actually quite big here. And the sea's got this lovely green colour to it. I'm already thinking about mixing the paint. Well, actually my body is so there's some little injuries at the moment. Doing jiu-jitsu, my knees a bit sprained, my back cold, especially this cold salt water. Is exactly what the doctor ordered for me. Let's get out now and go and paint. I'm all set up, I'm ready to paint. I'm using oil paints on a gesso primed panel. And I really like this scene. I like how there's a lot more blue sky now than when I first arrived on the beach, and I think this should make quite a nice painting. There's certainly a lot of nice colours to the scene, quite a lot of people on the beach, so that'll be fun painting some figures in. Remember, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, and let's start painting.
I'm painting on a 25 by 40 centimetre gesso primed panel that I've toned to a neutral grey. I start by sketching in the horizon line and the contour of the hills using raw umber paint. I'm now painting the sky immediately above the horizon, which is the lightest and warmest section of the sky, as the sky gets higher up it takes on a deeper blue hue. As I paint the sky, I leave some areas of the sky blank so that I can paint the clouds on top of these sections, as when working wet into wet paint, the colour mixes tend to mix on the painting surface. So to avoid dulling down the light paint for the sky, I try and paint this on top of the dry sections of the panel, rather than on top of the blue paint. Due to atmospheric perspective, this distant section of land is almost lost into the sky, so I'm careful to keep the tonal value close to that of the sky and to keep the details to a minimum and the colour quite low in chroma, which helps push this section further back in space, adding depth to the scene as a result. Whereas the land on the right hand side of the painting is closer to the foreground, and as a result there are greater shifts in the tonal values within this section. And there's also more chroma in the colours, with the section of the grass and the trees being visibly distinguishable. Although as I paint this section, I still avoid getting too close to the limit of my value range with the darks, as this area still isn't in the foreground of the painting. To paint the sea, I'm using a colour mix of ultramarine blue, permanent green and titanium white, as well as a small touch of cadmium yellow and a touch of alizarin crimson, just to grey down the vibrancy of this colour mix slightly, as alizarin crimson is the complement of turquoise. When you mix these two colours together, they create a neutral grey, so I'm just adding a small touch of the alizarin crimson to this bluish green colour mix to take away a bit of the vibrancy of the green, as I don't want the water to look an unnatural colour. Here I'm painting the white froth where the waves are breaking onto the shore. I'm painting the froth as a slightly off-white, which still gives me a bit of room in my value scale to paint a few even lighter highlights on top. To paint these sparkles of light glistening on the waves, I'm using a fine pointed brush that I've loaded with titanium white and a small touch of cadmium yellow. However, I haven't mixed these colours together on my palette. Instead, I'm just using the same brush to dip into both mixes so that they're both pure when I apply them to the panel. That way the white doesn't lose its lightness and the yellow doesn't lose its chroma. Rather, the two colours mix optically on the panel, creating the very vibrant effect of sunlight glistening on the waves. And this was a technique which is used a lot in the work of the Impressionists. Here I'm painting this shiny section of wet sand between the sea and the shore, which is known as the swash. And it's a thin layer of water that washes up on the beach after an incoming wave has broken. And this section normally has a cool bluish purplish hue to it, and I find it very satisfying to paint reflections, especially reflections of figures walking across this section, as they make a very clear reflection into this thin layer of water. Here I'm painting a figure into the scene, and I really like how her figure is silhouetted against the sea, and the white of her dress and the white of her cap are catching the sunlight, creating some dramatic contrast. It can be quite hard when painting a busy scene like this one to choose who to paint and where to position the figures in the scene, as the people in the scene are constantly moving and new figures are appearing and are moving in and out across the section of landscape that I'm painting. So I try and consciously decide where I want the figures in order to create a better overall composition. So in general, you want to paint figures which are on the edges of the painting to be facing towards the middle of the scene. That way they work as compositional arrows, leading the viewer's eyes into the painting rather than off the edge of the painting, as we tend to look in the direction that the figures are facing. And there's a lot of different compositional tricks you can do to call more attention to certain figures. A lot of that comes down to tonal values. For example, if one figure is illuminated in the light, or if they're silhouetted against a light background, they're going to stand out more than if someone kind of merges in with the tonal value of the background. Those are just a few things to be conscious of when painting figures into the composition, because when done well, it can really add a lot of visual interest and a narrative and make the painting a lot more interesting and intriguing to look at. I'm now painting some figures into the foreground on the right hand side of the painting, as the sand takes up over a third of my composition, and I feel that this area needs some more visual interest in order to prevent it from looking empty and the composition feeling unbalanced.
So I hope you enjoyed watching me paint here on Bournemouth Beach. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll see you in the next video.